What is up guys, this is the 179 Bob Killer with another video that I've been wanting to make for a really long time. I've played World of Tanks console since it came out, and like the vast majority of good players, I have grown to both love and hate this game. But I've noticed that most, if not all of my gripes with this game are fairly easily fixable. So that brings us here to my video on how to make World of Tanks console a better game. First off, let's cover something that I personally haven't heard many other people mention when discussing how to improve this game. And that is preventing players from purchasing premium tanks until they've unlocked the same tier tank in one of the tech trees. This means that I would not be able to purchase the Skoda T56 until I unlock something like a Peugeot 54. All of this is to ensure that new players won't be able to start the game, play one match at tier 3, and then immediately buy a tier 8 premium and not know how to play in a higher tier match. The entire point of the tech tree is to have players learn how the mechanics of World of Tanks works. By bypassing that, it enables bad players to get into matches that they were never supposed to be in. This is actually way more common than you might think. I would say that at least 7 out of 10 games I play at tier 8 through 10 have 1 or 2 premiums with 0 to 300 damage for the entire game. I also would like to say that Cold War should not be available to play until a player has researched at least 1 tier 10 tank. There are actually a surprising amount of people who play a single game of World War II, think it's boring, and then immediately go to Cold War with absolutely no knowledge of how to play the game. Even worse, Wargaming gives everyone a free Era 1 premium tank just for completing the tutorial, further incentivizing bad players to play Cold War first. So what's the solution to this? Make the tutorial take place in World War II instead of Cold War, so it actually teaches players the fundamentals of tank gameplay, and then grant them a tier 3 premium tank. I understand that Wargaming wants to increase the amount of people who play Cold War, but I will cover how to properly do that later. Flooding Cold War with bad players is not how you should attempt to cultivate a dedicated player base for a game mode. So to sum it up, players should not be allowed to purchase premiums unless they have unlocked a same tier or era tech tree tank. Next up, let's talk about premium ammo. Honestly, I don't have a huge issue with premium ammo, but I can see why many people do. What is the solution to people just spamming premium? Add weak spots in tanks. Chems made a great video detailing how World of Tanks used to add weak spots in tanks that players could learn. His idea of adding weak spots back to the game while slightly nerfing all premium penetration is fantastic. I would gladly take a premium pen nerf to only being about 10 to 15% higher than standard pen. Having weak points in the tank not only showcases some realism into the game, but it also adds a fun layer of gameplay that good players can take the time to learn. Now, Chems noted that the reason why Wargaming did away with all of the weak points was because of the armor penetration indicator. While he suggests doing away with it entirely, I think that all that needs to be done is to have the indicator not change color for weak spots. That way, you can't just wiggle your reticle until it turns red, and then you'll find a weak spot. You'll actually have to learn where the weak spots are in the tank, and then shoot at them. It's a small change that will motivate players to actually look at the detailed tank models that Wargaming took time to develop for us. Another important thing to note is that players wouldn't have to just spam so much premium if Wargaming would just stop releasing busted, overpowered, super armored monsters. Seriously, the power creep in this game is insane. Anyone remember when tanks like the T-34 or Type 59 were actually scary?
Take this!
Lastly, in regards to premium things, Wargaming needs to implement a system where there can be no more than 3 of the same premium tank in the team. This mainly refers to Cold War, where I kid you not, you can have games with 10 thumpers on each team. Like, this isn't even fun. The entire game just devolves into people camping in the back of the map and sniping for 10 minutes before finally one team decides to push and either die or instantly stomp out the opposing side. The extreme lack of variety makes the game boring. No one wants to load up into a match and discover that the enemy team has 7 FV 4-11s, while your team has a mix of M103A2s and Conquerors. And now that I'm on the topic of premiums, why are the tier 10 premium tanks always locked? I've been saving my free experience to buy these things when they have another sale, but they've been locked for like half a year now. Even if I was willing to spend the full 450k to buy one of these things, I can't when every time I check they are locked.
Focus on this location.
Next, let's move on to maps. Map design in World of Tanks is very interesting. All of the maps need to accommodate for the multiple different classes of tanks to ensure that one team's spawn doesn't give them an advantage over the other team. Wargaming has done very well with some of these maps, but they've also failed epically with others. Let's compare one of the best maps with one of the worst maps. Himmelsdorf is a city map that features a massive hill on the right side which looks out over the rest of the map. This map has multiple paths to go down, but most importantly, if you decide that you aren't making progress on your flank, you have the ability to use the side streets to change your game plan. The only path that forces you into a single corridor is the hill, but that is the risk that you take for attempting to access the most advantageous position on the map. Both teams spawn in balanced areas and have an equal chance of winning. The map is also perfect for all tank classes except for artillery, and that's a good thing. You see, artillery players are kind of like the laughingstock of this game, and anything that hinders an artillery player is good. But don't worry, I'll have an entire section dedicated to skillless players later. Now let's look at a map called Great Wall. Jeez, this map has some issues. First of all, you are forced to go down one of 3 corridors that you have to fully commit to. There is no changing positions unless you turn around completely. On top of that, only one of the corridors actually matters and will determine if your team wins or loses the game. The middle of the map has terrible cover and usually only features camping TDs. The north corridor is just useless. To be completely honest, I rarely see anyone ever going towards that corridor. There is literally no reason to go there. Let's assume that you drive there unopposed, which you will be, and sit at the top of the hill. Your view range isn't good enough to spot the camping TDs, and you're just wasting your time on the hill when the rest of your team is fighting in the south. Cold War also sucks for this map. It's the exact same gameplay, but this time, if you dare to venture into the mid, you are instantly shot at due to the True Vision being enabled. And don't get me wrong, I love True Vision in Cold War, but this map just sucks. So what's the solution? Wargaming needs to just remove maps like Great Wall, and make more maps that don't have restrictive corridors. Pretty simple, honestly. Another quick thing about maps is that players should be given an option to ignore 1 or 2 of the maps from the matchmaker. This is something that is already done on the PC version. Yes, this might mean slightly longer queue times for players who have maps ignored, but that is just a cost for choosing what map you never want to see. This would be extremely beneficial to gameplay as well. There is nothing worse than queuing up with an E100 and seeing that you got placed on Prokhorovka. There is literally no good place to go on the entire map. It's super open and is just dreadful to play in almost every heavy tank. Even when you play ridgeline gods like the Machine or Krongvan, you are constantly getting lit up and sniped from the mid or the sides of the map. And God have mercy on you if there is 1 or 2 point-click adventure players in the game. We all know they'll have a huge boner for you with your whopping 20 km/h sack of hit points. There are a lot of maps that exist in both World War II and Cold War. That being said, not all of them fit Cold War gameplay, especially considering that True Vision is enabled. Some maps translated into Cold War perfectly fine, like Redshire or Kasserine, but other maps are atrocious to play on in Cold War. Karelia is the worst offender here. Both teams spawn in areas that have direct lines of sight onto the opposing team's spawn. This means that every time you load up in Karelia, you'll get shot at off the beginning of the game. Cold War tanks reload very quickly. I'm talking about 5 or 6 seconds for 400 to 500 damage shots. And good luck if you get a spawn away from the side that you wanted to push. You won't be able to cross back over without losing half of your health. I've seen people get permatracked 10 seconds into the match in Karelia, leading to their deaths moments later. This map is broken in Cold War and needs to be removed entirely. Other maps that Cold War players tend to hate are Great Wall, for the same reasons that I said earlier, Dragon Ridge, though I personally don't have a problem with it, Nominghan, and Swamp. Wargaming should remove those maps from Cold War and create more Cold War unique maps. It's no surprise that Cold War players enjoy the 4 maps made specifically for Cold War much better than all the ones made for World War II. Let's be honest here. The only good game mode is Team Destruction. While I understand the reason why bases exist, they are ultimately a detriment to the game. Let's take a look at Standard Battle. There are 2 bases on the map, one for your team and one for your opponent's team. If you sit in your opponent's base, you will earn base capture points for your team. These points, however, reset when you leave the capture circle or are shot by an enemy. Now you may be thinking that I'm going to sit here and tell you all about how it's dumb and unfair for a winning team to lose just because some shitter snuck into your base and capped it while your team was on the other side of the map. And if you're thinking that, you're actually wrong. I do believe that a team should be penalized for lemming training and not covering all of the flanks. What I have a problem with is the reality of how base capping goes. Out of 100 games, I might have 1 or 2 where I'm in a losing situation and can just barely snag a win because I capped the base with what's left of my team. But the vast majority of the time, I will be on the winning team, and my own shitter teammates will sit on the base while there is only like 5 or 6 enemies left. And to make matters worse, these shitters don't even understand that in close games like a 3v3, capping the base puts you at a disadvantage because it tells the enemy exactly where you are on the map. I can't tell you how many times I've lost a game due to half of my remaining teammates sitting on the base instead of pushing the enemies when they are weak. All it takes is a single HE splash to reset that timer, and this problem is amplified in Cold War. Every tank in Cold War can easily get from one side of the map to the other in less time than it takes to cap the base. So when my shitter teammates start capping the base, they are just wasting time, literally doing nothing but waiting for the enemy to take advantage of the fact that now I have 1 to 3 less people on my team actually playing. Encounter battles are basically the same as standard battles, but there is one base in the center of the map. This game mode also suffers from the same problems as standard battles, but with encounter battles, it can get much worse. Bad players will cap the base when the game is still a 10v10. In some cases, I've literally had to push my teammates off of the cap circle to ensure that the game continues. Now by this time, you might be thinking, why does it even matter if your team wins the game early? There are multiple reasons for this. Let's say you are a casual player like me, and you are trying to get a second mark of excellence on one of your tanks. You need to do 4,000 damage per game to increase your damage standing percentage. You load up into a game, you've played perfectly fine, and there are like 4 enemy tanks left that you are engaged with. You have 3,000 damage already and can easily dish out another couple thousand damage. But no, the game stops and the victory screen pops up because some shitter on your team with 200 damage just capped the base, plummeting your damage standing percentage. You are being punished for not your lack of skill, but rather the lack of skill of your shitter teammates. The amount of potential damage that I have lost due to these idiots on my team capping the base is well into the hundreds of thousands. Not only that, but ask any good player what they'd prefer, and they'll always say that having a great game but losing is preferable than having a shitty game and winning. Also, capping the base on a 10v10 isn't even fun. Like, what's there to say after? Oh boy, I drove to the center of the map, didn't shoot, and then won the game. Or you're in an AMX 40 and didn't even have the speed to see an opponent before your team won. This is all why Team Destruction is the best game mode. There are no bases, and you have to finish off every tank on the enemy team before the game ends. And you still have to worry about not covering a flank. If you lemming train, you'll get surrounded and die very quickly. I didn't mention Assault here because I don't really have any problems with it, and it's rarely in the Matchmaker. In fact, now that I'm thinking of it, I've never even seen a base cap during the Assault game mode. The game timer runs out before that can happen. So what is my grand solution to the game mode issue? Simple. Just allow players the ability to choose what game modes they want to play. They can highlight the ones that they want to play and leave out the ones that they don't want to play. That way, Wargaming doesn't even need to remove anything, and all of the shitters who think that base capping is the end-all be-all can still have their shitty game mode. There is also one other solution to this issue. What if instead of ending the game, capping the base actually granted your team a boost of some type? Like, what if capping the base gave your team a 10% reduction in reload time, 5% increase in horsepower, 5% increase to top speed, and a 10% increase to view range? Or maybe capping the base permanently lights up all of the remaining enemy tanks on the map. This is still a huge incentive to capture the base without it ruining the game for good players. It also still provides a great bonus to a losing team that took advantage of the enemy lemming training. But most importantly, the shitters who gravitate toward the base like Joe Biden to a box of preschool children will finally be doing something beneficial to the game.
The enemy knows our location. Penetration!
Now let's talk about the actual matchmaking process. Again, Kems brings up some great points in his video, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the point of skill-based matchmaking is to make the game fair. Every player has what's known as a WN8 number. This number is an overall rating of you as a player, and is extremely accurate at presenting how skillful a player is. So my suggestion is that the matchmaker takes into account a team's overall WN8 when building a match. There are many times when the game will dump 10 WN8 200 players on your team, while giving the enemy team 10 WN8 2000 players. How is this fair? People like to say that one or even a whole platoon of 3 people can win a game for your team, but that only works in fair games. My 2 super uni friends and I can't win a game when everyone in our team dies instantly and we get completely surrounded. This happens in Cold War a lot more commonly than you'd think. So if the matchmaker distributes the good players and bad players evenly, the game will become fair. Kems also mentions that light tanks need their own category of skill here to balance out the teams, and this makes sense. You can have a game with 2 evenly matched teams turn into a one-sided stomp just because the shitter light tank on your team flipped and died within the first 30 seconds of the match, and the super uni light tank on the enemy team spots out all of your allies.
Well done.
Friendly fire is a net positive for the game. There are tons of cases where players on my own team drive in front of me as I'm trying to shoot, and subsequently block my shots. If they receive damage from doing so, they might learn to be more aware in the future. Many players also recklessly drive into me as I'm trying to aim my shots, or just flat out block my tank when I'm trying to reverse. Placing a few rounds into them is a great way of teaching them how not to do that. It would also mean that I can easily reset the cap if my shitter teammates are capping the base while there's still enemies left to hunt down. Now, does this mean that there will be shitters who try to team kill? Yes, but they will be put down very quickly. Wargaming can also make it so that you have to pay the silver cost for the friendly tanks that you damage, further incentivizing players to play better and not team kill.
Got our driver back.
While I like having the new consumable system, I feel like it takes away from a huge part of the game's complexity. This is mainly for repair kits and med kits. Back before the consumable change, a premium repair kit acted like the regular ones of the modern day, meaning that a premium repair kit had one use and would fix everything on your tank. Normal repair kits would have one use, but you had to select which thing you wanted to fix on your tank. This same logic can be applied to the medkits. It made players have to consider what was more valuable to fix, or who was more valuable to save. Would you fix your track that was just blown off, or would you save your repair kit for a possible ammo or engine damage? Should I save my driver to get the speed to get to the positions that I want? Or should I save my gunner for accuracy? This also made it so that track mechanic and general repair skills were actually useful. I doubt anyone actually uses them now that a repair kit just instantly fixes everything and then recharges after a minute. The old system also allowed players to more tactfully engage with enemy tanks. Before the change, I could shoot off an enemy's track and I knew that their repair kit was used if the track instantly repaired. That was huge information back then. I could exploit that knowledge later on by tracking the tank again or damaging the tank's ammo rack, permanently stunting its reload speed. Did this mean that the game was harder back then? Yes, but it also taught people how to use armor effectively and to avoid serious damage. Nowadays, people just carelessly drive into a position, get shot at, repair what happened to them, and then they repeat the process. The punishment for playing like a shitter is just that you lose some health. Back in the day, we didn't have as many shitters because people would learn not to do dumb things like poke around a corner blindly. They would have experience of being tracked and not being able to repair it, causing them to die. With that knowledge, people would increase their skills by learning how to side scrape around corners. Here is one of the biggest issues in the World War II game mode: artillery. To sum it up, artillery is the most boring and skillless class that you can play. Not just in World of Tanks, but for pretty much every game that exists. So what is this riveting gameplay like, you may be asking? Well, let me show you. You grab a bag of chips, pull out your phone, and start playing Clash of Clans. Then in between raids, you press the shoot button on your controller and watch your fully aimed shell either hit and cause huge amounts of damage, or miss and still cause damage. And I'm not even joking about playing Clash of Clans. I do that almost every time I have to play an artillery for a challenge. Playing artillery is just like playing a point-click adventure game. It's way too easy and boring. So why does all this matter? Well, think about it. Arty players just sit in the back of the map and randomly one-shot people while everyone else is actually playing this game called World of Tanks. Not only is there no skill involved while playing Arty, but this extreme lack of skill punishes good players. Imagine you're in a tank that has shit hull armor and decent turret armor. Your goal should be to get hull down and use your armor to the best of your tank's ability. So over the course of many games, you learn about strong positions that give your tank a fighting chance. But no, you get punished for that. Arty takes a big steaming dump on you, and now you've lost most of your health. And good luck if you're in a slow super heavy. The moment an E100, Type 5, or mouse loads into the game, all Arty players within a 100-mile radius pop massive boners for you and will only shoot at you for the entire game. Good players should not be punished for making the correct decisions. Therefore, the best solution to this problem is to remove artillery entirely from the game. Seriously, no good players actually want artillery in the game. But if artillery is removed, how can we deal with all the camping super heavies? Easy. If you have a derp gun, use HE. People really underestimate the power of HE on higher caliber guns. In fact, on tanks like the E100, I run just as many, if not more HE than standard rounds. And if you don't feel like slinging HE, or just don't have a big enough gun for it, then get this: move to another flank. Seriously, people just commit to a flank and then they're afraid of relocating positions. All you are doing is feeding the camping heavies and TDs. If they want to camp, just let them sit there with no damage. You don't have to stay there, popping out every now and then just to be farmed. Now, I understand that the likelihood of Wargaming removing artillery from the game is very slim. Most likely because they want to cater to these obese gremlins that spend thousands on World of Tanks with 10k games in Arty. And I'm not joking, there are actually people who exist that only play artillery. And the thing is, they are usually really bad too. Of course, any stats from an artillery player is basically worthless, but if you only play artillery and you aren't even breaking at 2000 WN8, you have some serious issues. You are failing at the easiest thing you could possibly be doing. But I digress. If Wargaming continues to refuse to remove artillery, then they should provide some much needed Arty nerfs. And I'm not talking about the horrendous nerfs that they did on the PC version, which actually made Arty even more cancer. I'm talking about straight up nerfs with no reworks. All artillery should have accuracy decreased by 30%, aim time increased by 30%, damage reduced by 50%, and reload speed increased by 50%. The class of artillery should also only be accessible from tier 7 and higher. There is no reason to have low tier artillery. It just makes new players quit the game when they don't understand why they're randomly getting one shot from the sky. Now, I won't completely drag Wargaming through the mud here. They have made a couple steps in the right direction. There is now an indicator that tells you when a no-skill player is looking at you. And for a while, they even made it so that only one artillery player could be in a team, which was met with overall support from the community. But of course, Wargaming decided to revert it back to the maximum of 3 0-skill shitters on the team. I seriously have no idea why they did that. So in the meantime, how can we as a community help solve the Arty problem? Continue filing complaints to Wargaming about artillery. You can also just troll artillery every chance you get. For example, I get loads of amusement by just sending a message that reads "reported" to each artillery player I find, both on my team and the enemy team. Like I said earlier, artillery players are the laughing stock of this game, and should never be taken seriously. And believe it or not, some of them actually think that they're good at the game, or even have the slightest ounce of skill. It just reminds me of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which outlined how dumb people think they're really smart, only in this case, it's no-skill people thinking that they have skill. As promised, here are some ideas I have to increase the Cold War player base. These would all be best used in the scenario where Wargaming actually implements the system where you have to unlock Cold War by researching a tier 10 tank. First of all, lower the prices on some of the tanks and especially their upgrades. I understand that Cold War games grant much more silver than World War II, but it isn't an excuse for forcing me to spend 2 million silver on a single gun upgrade for an Era 2 tank. Just look at this Reddit post I found. 54 million silver just to complete one tank line, and that's not even including the upgrade costs. One realistic solution to this would be to implement on-track challenges for Cold War tanks. Not only does this incentivize players to play Cold War, but it would also make it so that free-to-play players can actually afford to buy these expensive tanks when there is an on-track sale. Another way to get players motivated for Cold War is to have more small bonuses for playing Cold War tanks. These could include doubling the amount of free XP players get, increasing Commander XP by 20%, or adding 1 to 5 pieces of gold at the end of every battle. One more comical way Wargaming could motivate people to play Cold War is by advertising it as an artillery-free game mode. I know it may sound crazy, but the vast majority of people who only play Cold War do it specifically because there is no artillery. Wargaming could also add Cold War specific challenges to further increase the player base. All in all, there are many far better ways for Wargaming to get people to play Cold War that don't involve sending new players to the game mode immediately from the tutorial. Also, even though I said it before, limit the amount of premium tanks per team to 3 of a kind. Crew skills in the console edition of World of Tanks work wildly different from the PC version. Only the commander can learn skills, which I'm actually not against. What I am against though is the limit to 9 skills per commander. There are tons of skills to choose from, but there are only a select few that are actually used. There is some variation on what type of skills you put on different tank classes, but every class should always start a commander with Sixth Sense, Rapid Loading, Born Leader, and Steady Aim. That means that realistically, each commander can only choose 5 skills. And even then, each class has a strict set of which skills you should choose to not be at a disadvantage. This means that there are many skills in the game that are rarely or never used. This isn't even because they are bad, it is just because there are flat out better alternatives. My recommendation here is to have each commander be able to learn 15 skills instead of 9. And this shouldn't increase the amount of XP needed to learn the new skills. Rather, they should be incorporated into the current model, unlocking skills at more frequent intervals. By increasing the amount of skill slots to 15, it enables players to experiment and design commanders using skills that normally would never be seen. Pain tolerance sounds amazing, and I'd really love to give it a try, but with the current system, I would just be placing myself at a disadvantage for using it, because it would be taking up the spot of one of the required skills. Also, while we're talking about skills, Wargaming needs to stop forcing everyone to pay gold to reselect all of their commander's skills at the same time. It makes so much more sense to allow someone to pay 10 gold to change one skill, rather than forcing them to pay 90 gold to still only change one skill. Also, perks like Adrenaline Rush and Last Stand should either be changed to activate when a tank is under 20% HP rather than 10%, or they should both be reworked to provide a boost based off of the percentage of HP that your tank has. What do I mean by this? Simple. If Adrenaline Rush provides a 10% boost to reload speed, it can then have the percentage be correlated directly with the HP of the tank. If the tank is at 100% HP, there is no boost. If the tank is at 50% HP, then there will be a 5% boost. Something like that would make both of these perks actually interesting to use. In this last part of the video, I'll be listing off some other minor quality of life changes that would make the game better. Game chat is broken. Many players can't use game chat either because no one can hear them when their mic is plugged in, or because they can't hear anyone else when their mic is plugged in. Wargaming really needs to fix this. World of Tanks is supposed to be a team-based game. That means communication is important during the heat of battle, so please Wargaming, fix game chat. Bring back 5-person platoons and make it so that no more than 3 of the same tank can be selected in the platoon. These 5-man platoons were not overpowered back in the day, and they were a lot of fun. Add more 3D hero commanders with special voice-acted lines. The player base loves these commanders. Add pinup skins for the M103A1, M60A2, and every tier 10 tank. Remove the Add Friend button when you click on a person's profile in-game. I've never used it, and I only click on it when the game glitches as I'm trying to report a player. Also, increase the report limit to 10 per day instead of 5. There are a ton of AFK people and griefers in the game. Allow Xbox users to disable crossplay. We don't want to play with PlayStation players. How can I send hate mail to a PlayStation player when I'm on Xbox? Buff the Super Pershing back to where it was before the nerf. It never needed it in the first place. Buff the Death Star back to where it was before the nerf. It was a one-trick pony and Wargaming took away its one trick. I don't even care if they have to increase the reload speed a little bit. Bring back the damage. Remove the Sexton 1 from the game. It is a Seal Clubber's dream and deters new players from continuing the game. Honestly, does Wargaming think a new player will continue playing after getting nuked from heaven every game? Let me buy premium 10s. It's the only reason why I've been saving up free XP. Make it so that custom games doesn't cost silver. This is actually huge if you are in a clan that competes in tournaments. Make it so that you can save replays of games in theater mode. Seriously, there is no point in having a theater mode if you can't save the replays that you like. And while we are talking about theater mode, please allow us to have the aiming reticle and damage counters show during the replay. Make the auto resupply for boosters turned off by default. That's a nasty little trick Wargaming plays to make unsuspecting players use up all their gold without knowing it. Fix the invite system. It is super glitchy, and half the time I form a platoon, someone ends up having to reboot the game because they can't join. Bring back 5x silver boosters. Seriously, there is no reason why they were removed. Make the base gold to free XP conversion rate 1 gold per 35 XP, and make the special event rate 1 gold to 50 XP. Increase the long haul challenges to 100 games, but make it never reset until it's completed. Nerf the Weasel and Thumper. They are the most cancerous things at Era 3. One of my friends described it as, you are just placing yourself at a disadvantage by not playing those tanks. Change the in-game menu screen back to how it looked in 2014. The current font is weird and hard to read. Also, Wargaming, don't think that no one noticed this little trick that you're trying to play. The price of the Ultimate Pass has always been 6,000 gold. Saying that it is at a 75% discount is a huge insult to the intelligence of your player base. Either that, or you're actually considering charging 24,000 gold for the Ultimate Pass in the future. That's absolutely atrocious. Oh boy, that was a long one. Overall, I still enjoy World of Tanks, but it is becoming increasingly clear that more and more of the player base is dying each year. I believe that by implementing these changes, Wargaming can seriously take back the player base and once again have a game that everyone enjoys. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.